So just press there. It looks like it's working.
Okay. Turn the sound down.
So
Okay.
let's assume we're live.
Hey, everybody, I'm going to assume that we are live on the interweb, broadcasting around the world. It's a scary thought. I'd like to welcome you all and thank you for joining our webinar tonight on this very timely topic. Something that's near and dear to Kim's heart and something that touches all of us, I think, with young children or even without, just seeing what's going on in the school system and how many working parents, young working parents, women in particular, have been affected by the COVID economic crisis. But I'm just going to start. Kim and I have been doing these webinars every week. This is the first one we've had that's focused on a particular topic. We've been doing just sort of more general Q&A, get to know Kim events up until this point. And our standard practice is for me to just do a bit of an intro on Kim, because often there's people that join in who don't know Kim very well and might be experiencing or seeing Kim for the first time. So I have a little bit of a bio and my own sort of testimonial as to why I'm supporting Kim. That's how I start off these meetings. So the story is, I first met Kim in 2014 when we were both working members of the BC Green Party's Provincial Council. And back then, even I was immediately impressed by her enthusiasm for the party, for all it stands for, and her determination to use her involvement with the party to create real, lasting change for the people in her community and across the province. And over the last 15 years, I personally have worked on many different political campaigns at the local, provincial, and federal levels for different parties, not just the Green Party. I've done my rounds around different parties at different times. And I know that many candidates, especially women candidates, need to be convinced to run. They're often approached by the leader or the local riding association and courted over a period of time. Because as we all know, that jumping into politics is not an easy game, and it's not something that anyone takes lightly. But Kim stands out apart from the other candidates I have worked with in many ways, not the least of which is that she really wants this. She feels drawn to play a leadership role in BC politics with the BC Green Party and doesn't shy away from the tremendous challenge this presents to her personal and her professional life. I also know that she's overcome some tough times personally and has managed to raise 3 great kids, excuse the siren, I'm downtown Victoria here, while building a very successful business and playing a leadership role in her community on many levels. She's been an active and proud member of the BC Green Party for the last 6 years, having served on provincial council as vice chair and secretary. In 2017, she ran as the BC Green Party MLA candidate for the riding of Powell River Sunshine Coast, where her team doubled the previous 2013 vote share for the Greens. And after that, she founded the local riding association for the Green Party. And the party has recognized her hard work a few times. In 2016, Kim was a recipient of the Rising Star Green Globe Award. In 2017, she received the Outstanding Service Award. 2019, the Volunteer Appreciation Certificate for her efforts on the pro-referendum campaign, where she personally called over 900 British Columbians in a matter of days. She is a phoning machine. And to me, Kim personifies feminine energy. She's tough when she needs to be, but she's also compassionate and caring, works in collaboration with others with a razor focus on her priorities. In uncertain times like we find ourselves in lately, this is the kind of leadership our province and the world needs more of. So I didn't hesitate for a second when Kim asked me to take on the role of campaign manager in her bid to become the next leader for the BC Green Party. I'm honored to work with a leadership candidate with such integrity, motivation, passion, and grit. So please welcome my friend, Kim Darwin.
Thank you so much, Rita. And I'm so grateful that Rita said yes when I asked her to be my campaign manager. So we have 3 guests today who I will be introducing shortly. But just before I start, I want to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from the traditional territory of the Sechelt Nation. And I think top of mind for everyone, we know that COVID-19 has affected every segment of our society, but what we also know is that it hasn't done so in an equal fashion. The effects have been pretty disproportionate. And as you know, we were talking about building back better. I actually don't love that term, but as we talk about coming out of COVID, the lack of investment into childcare has really come to roost through the effects of COVID-19. So throughout the last month or two, with the pause in between, I've been speaking to people all over British Columbia. I like to talk, so I've been calling members and supporters throughout British Columbia. I've spoken to grandparents who have come out of retirement to care for their grandchildren. I've talked to teachers who've been juggling their online learning for their students simultaneously with teaching their own children and caring for their own children. And mostly with women, and there are some men who obviously who have lost their jobs because of COVID, but disproportionately 60% of women have been the ones that have lost jobs. Some have had to quit their jobs, some willingly and some not so much, in order to care for their children, because someone had to care for their children. And we know that 74% of women generally earn less than their male counterparts. So they've had to make a choice. Who cares for the children? And the obvious one is the lower income earner. And so they've become single income families now. And what we know is that with previous recessions, the job losses have been mostly male blue-collar jobs, but not this time. So what this means is that as we move out of the recession that really started last fall, that the way that we move out of it has to be different as well. So we've probably all heard of, creating shovel-ready projects. We do need some of those, some green projects. But what I would really like to see is an investment into childcare. So even prior to COVID-19, for years and years, women like Martha Friendly have been advocating for national childcare plans to ensure safe and affordable childcare and to close the gender wage gap that we've been railing about for ages, and to increase promotion opportunities for women in the workplace. And it's been scientifically proven that giving children an early jumpstart on learning has been shown to improve learning outcomes for the duration of the children's learning years. So 29 and 32 years ago, with the births of my first two children, it didn't make sense for me to go back to my job. I wasn't earning enough income. So at that time, I ended up running daycares at both times for my children so that I could stay with my children and earn an income. When I did return to my legal assistant job, oh my gosh, I remember the creativity and the mom guilt of cobbling together adequate childcare. I did friend swap childcare. I hired summer students at some times. I found a few mums who were stay-at-home mums with little ones. And on more than one occasion, I remember going to works with both my children and me, both sobbing. And as a result of not being able to find affordable childcare for my three children, it kept me trapped in an abusive relationship for 5 years longer than what it should have. So it wasn't until my youngest child entered kindergarten that I was able to flee that violent relationship. I was really lucky that I had an understanding female employer who allowed me to work 5 days a week from 8:30 to 3 to accommodate my children's school. Otherwise, we would have been stuck longer. So flexible work is something that I talked about earlier. So I really feel that governments who value gender equality should authentically be looking at investments into childcare and early childhood education opportunities and training early childhood educators. In Quebec, in 1996, they are one of the few provincial Canadian provinces that invested into childcare. and that, yeah, in 1986. And the return on investment was swift and definitive. As Martha Friendly, the childcare advocate I described earlier, said, for every $1 invested into childcare, it returns $6 of economic activity due to the additional income tax that are paid into the coffers by working women who are advancing their careers. Now, again, COVID, we know that childcare will have to be delivered in new ways, and some of our guests are going to talk about that. And so now I'd like to introduce, we have 3 guests. We have Krista Wollen, who is a mom, an entrepreneur, and a realtor, and, you know, with moms, many other things. We have Lydia Watson, who is a mom, bike shop owner, outgoing chair of Capilano University Seashelt campus. She's worked with ECCE instructors as well as students at CapU. And we have Teressa, who is also a mom and an early childhood educator living the new life of COVID-19 and caring for children. So I'm going to open up with a couple of questions, and I will start off with Krista because we chatted last week and she had lots to share about her experience. So Krista, your first question for you, what has your childcare experience been pre-COVID and now mid-COVID? So that's for Krista. Can we hear you, Krista? You might have to unmute. Uh-oh, maybe we should have tested that before. Hover
okay,
down.
Me, see if I can do it.
Okay.
Try it now, Krista.
Mute. There we go. Okay.
All right. I mean, there we go.
Maybe there was I wasn't able to unmute myself. And actually, I can't see any. Is that everybody else's experience?
No, I can see everybody.
You can see. Okay. So I will just remember that you can see me. Because I can't see myself either. I'm not sure why. But anyways. Okay. So my experience of childcare pre-COVID and then during COVID, that's okay. So I have a husband who works out of town when he's working. So when he goes to work and it's not regular, there's no regular schedule. So when he goes to work, I have to cobble together. And I actually would like to take a step back even. The career I chose was actually a family decision. I would have stayed in my last career if it was, I liked that career, but it was pretty clear that it was going to be really tricky for me to be working in that career and my husband to be working in his. And being more available for my kids was a value that I wanted and also thought I had the ability to create. And I realized that's not everybody's experience. So I chose a career where I knew the hours would be really flexible and my goal was to be able to pick up my kids at least 50% of the, from school 50% of the time. And I feel like that's part of it because I've tried to craft this career in a way that I can continue to do that, but it also requires a lot of creativity and probably letting my kids down sometimes. And yeah. So
so Krista, your husband's in the gig economy, just so we can.
He works in film, so he's we never know when he's coming or going. And so I watch his experience of work where he can be 100% home when he's home and 100% at work when he's at work. And I'm here to make sure that and that I feel is also kind of an important part of this conversation, because that is that I find challenging, that I can't kind of hang up my parenting role ever. So now, how is childcare during COVID? So we live in a community where my mom and dad also live. So they definitely aren't, they're very loving and contributing grandparents, but they're not grandparents who want to turn their whole life over to childcare either. So I can rely on them for you know, 1 day a week pickup and sort of, as Kim mentioned, cobble things together. However, during COVID, they're both also immune compromised. So we've really tried to keep our physical distance from them. And that includes limited childcare. I'm nervous to have a babysitter because I don't want, I don't want to, I think we're pretty safe on the Sunshine Coast. I know I'm speaking to, you know, a broader audience, but but I still feel like that's a lot to ask of my, it's an unnecessary risk to put on my family to have a babysitter come into the house, which I know will be an individual experience for everyone. So yeah, it's been, it just feels like there's not ever any routine or anything solid.
Yeah. You said a phrase to me when we were chatting the other day that was pretty powerful. Do you want to repeat that before we ask our next question?
Yeah, for sure. Well, and throughout this whole COVID thing, the memes have been amazingly hilarious and awesome. And this particular one really stood out to me. And that is that as a mom, I feel like I need to parent like I don't have a job, and be a professional like I don't have kids. And that expectation is relaxed a little bit over COVID, because obviously I can't hide the fact that my office is at home now, and everybody's is, but there's been other cracks in that.
Yeah. Thanks, Krista. Really appreciate that. I think I'd like to open that up also, Lydia, being a mom, as well as a business owner, as well as you know, working in Capilano University. So same question to you. What is your experience being pre-COVID? Your children are a little bit older now, and now in the midst of COVID. How have you been faring?
Yeah, thank you. I have one daughter, she's 11. And to be honest, at the beginning, I thought my work shifted to everything from home. I was teaching students online and meetings online, and I thought I could do this, no problem. And not only did it not work in terms of homeschooling and all of that, and Krista and I had a little conversation a few hours before. And one of the things we talked about was that what I noticed is that over those 3 months is that being home, and even though my daughter's 11 and technically can be home by herself, being home and working doesn't mean I'm present. And when I'm not present for my kid, for my daughter, you know, I'm starting to see, and I have seen, a lot of the challenges that she's experienced. And she's also really taken on, she's quite a sensitive girl, and she's taken on a lot of my stress at work. And these are all things that honestly, I went into it thinking, I can work from home and raise my child and care for my child. I can do this. And she's 11. And so I think about the parents who had a lot younger kids and had to juggle the work. And it really surprised me in many ways. And I think one of the things that I'm worried about for the future, when we talk about how many, especially in my work, where we're, you know, looking at possibly 2 years at least of online courses and moving to online courses in post-secondary for the future, education is going to be changed forever. Yeah. So when I think about that and how we're moving to more of a remote work, we have to think about that we're not able to care for our children just because we're home. And I think no matter what age they are. So I think that really is something that I want to think about for the future.
That is such a good point, and you're not the only one that I've been hearing that from. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up for sure. Yeah, Teresa, yes, you have also have an experience to share.
Yeah, I mean, mine, both of my children had their birthdays during spring break, so they had, so they're now 10 and 12. So I'm out of that little person stage, but I normally teach preschool, and I'm actually with Burnaby Rec, and they were great because the one thing they did right, I would say, for their employees, was they actually paid them until the end of May, even though we weren't working, which was fantastic. So they really did. I think of a lot of the women that I work with, and I know they needed that money, and it is more than what, so it was, I think they did that right. And I think I have to give them kudos for that, for sure. But I also do a lot of volunteering. So I was on a lot of Zoom meetings, and I did a lot of Zoom meetings where I didn't show my face because there was a good chance someone was going to come in and talk to me, or just give me a hug or a kiss because they didn't really want to do their schoolwork, or it was very, yeah. So I felt bad a lot of times being on meetings. And knowing that was a good chance, it'd be like, why don't we see you? And I'm like, yeah, because something bad's going to happen basically in the background. You don't need to see, chances are. But I mean, my kids being older, a little bit easier. My daughter, very independent, super. But my son definitely needs a little bit more focusing. So that was, challenging during this time. But I mean, I have a friend with 4 and 6, and he happens to be the primary caregiver, and he basically couldn't work at all, trying to do remote and stuff, and then go back to work, and everyone's like, why didn't you do any work? So I mean, a lot of parents, I think, got that in this, if they were trying to do the juggling and trying, even if they had the flexible hours before, I think they would come back to work and get like, why didn't you get anything done, and why? And I think that was big forgotten. And I do worry about my colleagues. I think a lot. I thought about them during this time. I mean, my journey through with ECE has been different. I worked in preschool when I had my children. I did the math, and I couldn't work because I think I would lose about $20 a day to work. So then I stayed home until my kids were old enough to that, I could do the juggling of, okay, I can drop them off and I can work in the middle of the day, or the grandparents are willing to maybe pick them up from school, and those sort of things too, in order to get back. And it's difficult. And I mean, I have a lot of friends who just complained about finding any childcare. Like, there's so many stories, and I always worry. I do worry about my fellow colleagues and how they're surviving, because most preschools aren't working, and I don't even know if they're going back. So I don't even know.
Actually, that was a question I had for you. What does fall look like for your preschool? What does that look like?
So I was talking to a supervisor and have just run into her at the park, and I go, so what's going on? She's like, I don't even know she said they don't even know if they're going back for 2 years, was almost what she was thinking. Like, that's wow. So that's a lot of programs. That's a lot of women, unfortunately, who are not going to be going back to work, and not like, and I was where I volunteer today. It's at a church. We feed the homeless, but there was a daycare on the other side. Not daycare, there was a preschool. And I said to them, oh, is she going back? She's like, she tried in July, and so she's going to shut down altogether. Like, so there's another 4 jobs that are gone, within my community. And what are these women going to be doing? And
yeah,
that's where I really worry is the future of, and if they find new jobs, are we going to get them back when we need them? These trained women? I don't know.
Well, and I think that's, talking, a lot of women do put their jobs on hold, just as you did, in order to care for their children, which of course we want to. And that's why having flexibility in the workforce in general, not taking COVID into consideration, is just so important, so that we can, continue on and, take those job promotions if they become available. We'll sort of follow on here. this, I think yesterday, the government came out with a partial back to school plan. Obviously, there's a lot of details that have yet to be fleshed out, but at least the dialogue has started. Although we are told to have a plan B, which, you know, as we've all described now, the plan Bs that we had pre-COVID have been less than favorable, but having them now is even more difficult. One of the things that Teressa and I also talked about when we were chatting about this particular program is that the how much you're paid to be an early childhood educator could be an inhibiting factor to having more early childhood educators. And Lydia, I'm not sure if you can answer the program for the early childhood educator program. How long is that program? Is it a certification that people get? Are there work placement opportunities? I'm not sure if you can speak to that, Lydia, because I know that we have a shortage of early childhood educators. That is quite clear.
Yes, definitely. I can speak to it in a broad way. That there is you can get an early childhood education degree, so you can get 4 years, but you don't need that in order to work in a childcare facility. The minimum you do need, though, and I don't know the exact number of courses on this, but I believe it's a certificate, which is 1 year full time. And many students at the Childcare Sunshine Coast campus are doing this part time because they're actually working as well as, you know, completing their certificate, also raising their own kids and all of that. The other challenge, and I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this, but it's the courses, great, some really great hands-on practicum courses, very important, but there are also some theory courses where students are writing papers, quite demanding. And so in my experience in working with some of the students, that's been a real challenge, because many students come into this profession not necessarily to go, these 100 level courses are preparing you for the degree. So you're writing these papers, APA style, et cetera, but they're not necessarily going for the degree. Many of them are just going for the, not just, but they're going for the certificate so that they can work in early childhood care and education. So that is definitely another challenge. I don't know if you're nodding your head, Teressa, and when I was talking about that, but yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, Kim.
Yeah. Teressa, did you have something to add to that from your experience?
Well, I mean, I did the whole part-time over 2 years. Just I did mine through continuing ed. So, but I can see that if it's the university level, if that's all that's all in your community. Yeah. And I could see, you know, writing papers and stuff was easy for me, but I definitely saw the struggles with other people in my class, and especially a lot of women who have immigrated to Canada, and they want to have the certificate, they want to do the home, you know, a home daycare, and they want to be really qualified and get everything, but it was a struggle for them. I could see it. And I think thankfully, you know, I think there maybe are different, I mean, it is, I do think could be a detriment, and even doing, if they're trying to do kids and have a business, which some of them were, or working in centers, even the half time was a lot for them. Like it was almost, yeah, it was, there were times, I didn't have kids at the time, so I could manage, but yeah, it's another barrier, I would say, for sure. I do think they're really important. And I think I valued every single one of my classes, and I think it really did prepare me very well. And I can share my knowledge with parents and stuff like that, but I can see where it's another barrier for especially, say, immigrant women with, you know, English is not their first language and stuff like that it was, yeah. And we're missing out on those wonderful experiences and those wonderful people.
Yeah, it seems like we have this little bit of a vicious cycle that women who want to get into the course need childcare in order to take the childcare course. So, yeah, investing in childcare will, that was going to be one of my other questions, is how do you think we can attract more students into the early childhood education courses? And we've kind of determined that the barriers to that. And I don't know whether at the high school level, and Lydia, not sure if you can answer this, whether it's something that is really put out as a need in our society, that we need more early childhood education students to take the courses in order to provide the childcare and the early childhood education. So I don't know if you know at the high school level whether that has been being actively pursued. Lydia?
It is on the Sunshine Coast. I can tell you that we have a wonderful group of faculty who work. They are from North Vancouver, but they actually work on and teach on the Sunshine Coast campus. And they're very well connected with the Resource Center and other ECCE governing bodies. And they also do talk to high school students. They also go into the high schools and talk about, and I would say here on the Sunshine Coast, we probably get about 4 to 5 students right out of high school that are interested. So that's out of the high schools here.
Excellent, because hopefully the students right out of high school don't have the same challenges with their own childcare. Yeah, and hopefully being able to still live with mom and dad, so there's hopefully not that financial barrier as well. We are going to open this up to our audience to ask any questions, and I haven't been paying a lot of attention as to whether there are any questions in the chat just yet.
There's been some comments.
Okay.
Not really questions, but Leslie said that her daughter was an ECCE in the program and took additional courses to specialize in infant and toddler care and specialized inclusive care. The additional work and expense did not move her up the pay grid at her workplace, which I guess is a chronic problem, isn't it? Even if you're exceptionally qualified and experienced, it's just barely over minimum wage usually, isn't it? It's not a living wage for most of these people that are providing such important care.
Well, I'll just add to that. We have a 24-hour childcare center on the Sunshine Coast, which is strangely enough a very rare thing. So they really cater to a lot of the parents that do shift work or have to travel for work. And the funding model that currently exists in the province of British Columbia, it ends up being that Eve, who runs that child care center, ends up working for free because the model doesn't work for 24-hour childcare. So she's formed such a bond with the families that she looks after that she's just taking the hit because the families can't afford to pay over and above what the province pays. So I've been chatting with them quite a bit. They've been trying to get that funding model amended, but what we tried to look for was other 24-hour a day childcare centers so that we could have a larger voice, and they just seem to be incredibly rare, which I found bizarre considering how many shift workers there are. So yeah, and does anybody else have any questions here? I do have a few other ones that I can ask, but I really wanted to engage the audience as well with not necessarily questions, but perhaps your experiences as well. And especially if there's anybody on the call that has children and they're wondering what they're going to do going back this fall. I'd love to hear anybody's plan B. Maybe somebody's got a real creative plan B that we can share. Otherwise, I'm going to ask Krista what your dream plan B would be. Oh, you're still muted there, Krista.
Sorry, there we go. I still can't see you guys, so I feel like I'm speaking into a black screen, which I am. Anyways, my plan B for school, and I do think plan B is actually plan A. I don't think it's going back full time, but I think that there will be a family member who is a teacher, and she has kids a similar age as mine, and then a couple other families I think will kind of try to bubble so that we can spell each other off and support each other in teaching, because it's sort of easier to work with a small group of kids than just your own. We sort of experimented with it a little bit at the end of the school year. Yeah, and otherwise, I don't know, to be honest. Just it's a lot of uncertainty. One thing that did come out of a positive thing that came out of, well, there were lots of positive things, to be honest, but one thing that we were able to see in our family is that with my husband knowing for sure that he wasn't working and collecting CERB, or the CERB EI thing, is that our family actually did pretty well having one worker and the other person making whatever you want to call that, a living wage. We ate better, we didn't spend as much money. So anyway, that kind of stirred the pot. I don't see us being a one income family, but it was definitely interesting to see that could be a possibility.
So that actually brings up something else that I wrote an article about early on in COVID is the guaranteed livable income. So you have just described how that could give quality of life.
Totally.
Yeah, not necessarily, if people can have one person working and, another person even working part-time to, keep their sanity, but also getting a guaranteed livable income, and putting those healthy dinners on the table and whatnot. There's definitely something to be said for that, for sure.
Yeah, and I noticed, I mean, among my friends, a lot of us noticed that way more quality connections with our kids. The engagement is just, I mean, and that is very specific to people who weren't working 9 to 5 from home, trying to replicate their office life at home. So completely do not think that's attainable or sustainable for people who are working in a professional situation where they're attending Zoom meetings and, higher level professionals. But in our family, because both of our jobs sort of were very quiet for a couple months, there was certainly stress, but we also were able to identify some of the positive things that came out of it, just in that the healthy eating, spending less money, spending more time together, finding silly things to do together rather than being, lusting after doing really, expensive fun activities outside, just, doing a puzzle. Those are things that we'd never done before. And so it could be amazing to have that kind of, economic structure for people.
Yeah. For sure. I think Leslie on the call here said the wage discrepancy between daycare centers and working as an education assistant at the school board is pretty significant. So the best ECCEs leave the school daycares to work in the school district. So that is, I mean, I see that as one of the big problems here that we need to rectify is the income. For childcare workers. It has to be, it's one of those unvalued jobs that COVID-19 has really laid bare again. So, and that's where investing into childcare, I'd say that is one of the biggest investments that we need to make is valuing those daycare centers. The other thing, one of the questions that one of the grandmas that I was talking to, who was looking after her 2-year-old grandchild while her daughter tried to teach from home because she was a teacher, she said, well, are we going to build these daycare centers? What about the mosques and the churches that actually already have facilities that we could use? So again, ensuring that we have the trained early childhood educators, but using the infrastructure, those buildings that are already built and designed to have children. I also kind of think that with COVID-19, the smaller centers are going to be the safer centers where you can manage all of the new protocols with COVID-19. And I'm just going to throw it out here too, just trying to find solutions is, you know, daycare co-ops. Has anybody had any experience with, you know, childcare co-ops? I know some mums have gotten together to do childcare sharing, but I'm just curious of whether there's been anybody has ever considered that or has experience either on the call or. It's just a, I wonder if that could be one of the, I mean, there's no one quick solution. I think it's going to be a real multifaceted, but that's just one that I am curious as to whether it's something that we should explore, which perhaps, yeah. Excellent. No other questions in the chat here? There we go. We have a quiet group. So I did have a couple of other questions, but I think we've almost answered them as we've gone through. So
I was curious about a couple of things.
Yeah.
I don't have any children, so this is not my world. It's a dog world, as you can hear. Yes, dogs barking. What do you think of just getting political about it, which is actually why we're here, right? The NDP promised the $10 a day daycare. That was a big part of their platform. And I know even when I was door knocking in the federal and provincial elections, people with kids brought that up a lot. Do you feel that the NDP are starting to fulfill on that promise, or is it even possible what they promised? Can they deliver that? I know they've got some experiments going, some test cases, one here in Victoria, I think. But is that working? What's your impression of it?
I don't know. I think the biggest barrier to actually having affordable daycare is having space. There's no space. I one time thought about doing one and running one, and I crunched the numbers and I'm like, wow, if I want to work for free or I want to pay people peanuts, then I can do it. And I was not willing to even consider doing it unless I could pay people $20 an hour, because I think they're, and I thought about this quite a few years ago, needless to say, but it just, I'm like, I can't do that with good conscience, like pay them not even close to a living wage. Like, and especially I'm from the mainland. I'm, you know, like you can't. So it's until we figure out how to get space and space to not-for-profits for like $1 a year. And I think that is, I'm actually holding cities to task on that one. It can happen if cities bylaw it in. And once we get that space, I think then we could maybe have a chance of getting that affordable childcare. But until we get there, we're not going to pay people well, and we're not going to be able to get it at a reasonable price and supply enough, you know. And that's where we're at. And I think that needs to be a lot of cities in the province working together to figure out how to legislate the space, and that can happen. And if, you know, you got to approve buildings, you got to approve new malls, you got to approve. Let's legislate it. Let's legislate it. And I know everyone would probably freak out at my idea, but that's, I think, a big piece. And I think a big piece is that we have to get men into this career. I'm calling it a career. And when, unfortunately, everywhere else we need to bring up the women, here we need to bring up the men, because that elevates us. And I also think children need it. They need that different perspective on a daily basis. Like it's that yin and yang and that balance, and they give this risk and it's amazing. And I think those two big pieces, and I think it would elevate the job because they like to pay men more than women. So it would elevate us, and it would, and there's ways to get, and again, that's, I think, hey man, I don't know if you can legislate that one, but I'm all about, like, you know, being
that's closing the wage gap, you know, from the other side, right?
Exactly.
For sure. That sort of leads me to, so I co-founded an organization called the Workforce Affordable Housing Society, where we were looking at building workforce housing that is based on people's incomes. And as soon as we started talking about what kind of building that we were going to build, I said it has to have a space for childcare. If we're building this for families to stay in our community who are going to you know, fill our jobs, we have to have that space. So I do see a role in building, you know, where we're building density in the city or in some of the smaller communities, when we're challenging the developers, you know, saying, hey, what about that common use area being used for childcare? Can be used for childcare during the day and then used for the community use rooms, you know, in the evening. A lot of the strata units, and Krista, you would know this being a realtor, a lot of the strata developments have, you know, units specifically for when people have guests. So I see it as, where there's a will, there's a way. And I see that as being one of the easiest ways of addressing what Teressa just said with the space, as well as using, you know, the churches more effectively. I think my kids went to Bethel Baptist preschool, and that was using their space more effectively instead of just using it on Sundays. So lots of space if we look for it, I think, but we need that will in order to find the way.
We had a comment Leslie put in the chat again, you know, just the wage discrepancy between daycare centers and working as an education system school board is pretty significant, right? And that's what you guys are talking about. So it's not keeping people in the private centers. That's what you were saying, Teressa, right? And also something Kim has talked about and Leslie's mentioning here, if they were deemed essential, would we view them differently? Like, why aren't they essential? Schools are essential, hospitals, police, looking after our children so people can actually work and earn a wage. Why is that still seen in our society, not in some countries, but in ours, still pretty low priority?
Well,
maybe
yeah,
more women leadership, Kim.
there we go. Yes, yeah. And that it truly is essential. And I do find it a little bit bizarre that, you know, the business organizations haven't really been lobbying for this, because, you know, when you have affordable childcare that is readily available, then your female and male workers are going to be able to get to work more efficiently. They're going to be they're going to be able to show up on a regular basis instead of saying, oh my gosh, you know, I couldn't find childcare today, so I'm sorry, I can't come in. And I think if you ask any employer, they are going to say that is detrimental to their own businesses, to their own bottom line, let alone to the, you know, the health and well-being of their employee who feels lame for saying, I can't come to work today because I can't find childcare. So I do find it quite bizarre that the business organizations really haven't, you know, taken this one to task. And Krista, I think you had something there that you were going to add, were you?
Yeah, I just, you're like back to the point of space. Just one thing that I've been thinking about is, with everybody kind of working from home, the requirements for commercial space for offices and brick and mortar style of retail will probably be, you know, under some looking for opportunities for revenue and to fill those spaces, because people, you know, there seems to be a shift happening from an office space. And so potentially those office spaces are getting smaller, and that could be a great opportunity for childcare spaces if they aren't charging crazy amounts of rent for the space.
Yeah. Leslie did say that they are on the provincial list of essential workers. So that is interesting. We just don't pay them that way. Yeah. Yeah. So lots to do. And I haven't fleshed out a model for British Columbia. I was really hoping to have to connect with Martha Friendly, who has been fighting this battle. She would like a federal plan. She's been really advocating for that. Ideally, that would be fantastic. But in the absence of having a federal plan, having a provincial plan is just as good, as we've seen what Quebec has done. So again, Quebec in 1996, and I'm not saying that we'd have to have the exact same plan as them. We would have to have a real good discussion as to what would work for British Columbia. But since 1996, that plan that they put together has been attributed with putting 70,000 women in the workforce and has more than paid for their investment into that plan because of the additional income taxes that the mostly women are paying into the coffers, essentially. So when we're talking about, you know, can we afford it? Well, we can't afford not to. And from a dollars and cents point of view, it just makes sense. So I would love to see it happen, and I'm going to try and make it happen. We have about just a couple more minutes. So any other questions from, or anything that our panelists would like to add?
There was a question on Facebook, Kim, from Aaron. Can you clarify what exactly is a childcare co-op that you referenced earlier?
Well, like any co-op, it's really, you would share space and share the resources, share the instructors. So instead of just having, say, a couple of parents getting together, sharing a space and resources, it would be a little bit more structured with the way that the pay would work with insurance and all of that kind of thing. When I ran the first daycare, when my first child was born, I basically did it in the basement of a teacher's home and looked after 2 teachers and 2 lawyers' children. So it was sort of a quasi co-op per se, but to be quite honest with you, we were doing that under the one parent's home's insurance, which was not ideal if something happened. So this would be a little bit more, more of a structured agreement, similar to other co-ops. But thanks for that question, Aaron.
Yeah, I think these situations call for much more creative solutions than because what we're doing is not working anymore. So I think people like yourselves here on this panel that are immersed in this issue, and Kim's been immersed in it too, getting our heads together and creating some really good policy direction for the province is essential.
Yeah, and COVID, again, it's laid so many things bare, and this is just one that keeps coming up over and over and over again. So really now is the time to sort out what programs would work for British Columbia, making sure that childcare workers are paid a living wage so that we can attract more, because I think that is a detriment. The lack of space and the lack of providers is going to continue to be a detriment until we make it an employment choice that is going to provide a living wage. So, well, I just really want to thank everybody for attending tonight. Thank you to our panelists for engaging as well and for the questions. I also wanted to say that next week on Wednesday, August 5th, we're going to have another session, and it's going to be on the circular economy. We are going to have 3 British Columbia businesses that are already practicing the circular economy model within their businesses. So I'm going to leave that until next week. I'm not even going to tell you what it is if you don't know. So I'm going to leave that a mystery so that you attend. And Also within our team here, Kim Darwin for Leadership team, we are always looking for volunteers. We are such a fun group to work with. So if you'd like to volunteer, you can go to kimdarwin.ca and click the volunteer button, and then one of my volunteer coordinators will get in touch with you. And of course, this whole world revolves around money, and a campaign is no different. So if you have the ability to donate to my campaign, I would be eternally grateful. So Rita, did you have anything else to add at the end? Did I do all of my homework?
Yes, you're learning to do the asks at the end, Kim. It's politics. We need to ask for help. We need to ask for money.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe the only other thing I might add, Kim, is that for people not familiar with the BC Green Party leadership race, you don't need to be a member to vote. You can just sign up on either through Kim's site or directly on the BC Greens website to be a supporter. And it just asks you a few questions and basically takes some basic information from you, and you will be registered. And when we open up voting in early September, you can cast your vote for Kim. So we're hoping a lot of people not traditionally involved with the party actually get involved with this process. It's the first time a BC political party leadership race has done this, so it's quite exciting.
Yeah, that is exciting. And just to let you know, there will be one all candidate forum, which will be, I believe, Facebook Live. It'll be online, and that will be September 1st. And then voting will be online as well as by telephone for those that can't navigate online. And that will start from September 5th and go through till September 13th with the winner announced on the 14th. So stay tuned for that. And if there's any other questions once everybody gets off the call today that you go, darn, I didn't ask that, you can email me hello@kimdarwin.ca or put it in the chat on the Facebook Live, and I'll check back on that. Rita will check back on that later as well. So really open to engaging on this. No one person has the answers to these complex questions, so it's really putting our heads together to find the appropriate answer so that we can move forward on this. I would love British Columbia to be the next province after Quebec to really value childcare and how it'll affect our whole workplace and close that gender gap in wages.
Okay, so thank you everyone, and enjoy this lovely evening and have a fabulous BC Day long weekend, and celebrate inside our great province all the great things we have to offer right here. Thanks again, you guys.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.